Okay, bringing us to our second item of business, the Marshall Lake Stewardship Group, and they are requesting this evening a letter of support in principle to Steve Thompson in order to preserve the Marshall Lake Dam and Lake. And let me pass the reins over to our representative.
Mayor Taylor and Council, thank you for seeing us. My name is John Greaves.
John Greaves.
I was trying to remember, I can tell. How many of you have actually been up to Marshall Lake? Okay, so not everybody, and probably not for a while. I'd like to pass those around just so that you can see what we're talking about. We've given you a lot of stuff to read, and hopefully you've had a chance to read it. I can read it out verbatim if you have seen it before, and that doesn't matter. I can just talk about it and not bore you. But I'm hoping that that I can just expand on what I've already sent you.
Yeah, it's an enormous job to present the whole picture, and I hope that Council has had an opportunity to read some of the material that's been coming forward. So
we did give you a lot of stuff to look at.
Yes, you did. So hitting the high points. Okay.
The group that I belong to is concerned that the province is making a mistake in its direction of trying to download the cost of operating, maintaining Marshall Lake onto local governments. We're not asking any of the local governments here to take on that cost. There was some misconception that maybe that's what we were asking for. We weren't asking for that. The ministry themselves, for years, have really done nothing to maintain the lake. I've spoken to people that were part of building the dam for the lake, and they assure me that that dam is safe. Well, they're not engineers, and I'm not an engineer. I can't say that for certain. There has been studies, and even the studies that we gave you copies of, if you read them and you read them in depth, basically they say, well, they're safe forever, but no engineer is going to put his signature on the bottom and say it's totally safe. And that's kind of what they say. They're safe unless there's a real bad disaster, and then something might happen and you would have to do something then, but it wouldn't be immediate. If those of you who have been up there, you would know that, because you'd look at the size of that dam, you'd look at the way that lake is basically, one end of it is fairly deep, the other end of it, where the dam is shallow. There's no pressure against a rickety old wooden dam, which is some of the news that came out of, not our local news people, but some of the news that came out of the provincial newscast said, rickety old dam. It isn't a rickety old dam. There really isn't a lot of money to be spent up there, and any money that is spent is basically the ministry's own call about having to spend it. There have been people who have been willing to donate their time to keep an eye on the dam yearly, etc., etc. And so we don't believe in our group that expense is really an issue. Even if the outlandish figures that were quoted in some of the reports for doing so, the cost would be about 3 cents per person in BC per year to maintain that dam, which is very little. And the expenses that they also talk about, we think that they really haven't thought about it, is to remove the dam or to decommission it, or are way higher than what they even believe, because there's a lot of material in that dam that would have to be pulled away. And there's also the adjacent landowners that would have to be thought about, and liability costs that haven't even been thought about. And to make a long story short, we think that little lake is a big tourism asset for this area. It is a place where water is stored. It is a place for fish and other animals to get water. It's wrong-headed to go in there because of something that happened somewhere else, being Oliver, and was they're not comparing apples and oranges. The thing that happened in Oliver was a totally different thing. People warned the government about what would happen with that dam because it wasn't unsafe. The government didn't do anything about it. They got into trouble because of that. They got horrendous costs because of that. And now they're looking at all the little dams around the province and saying, well, rather than having to deal with it, we'll just get rid of them. And there's a lot of people in the boundary area, including a ton of people in Grand Forks that have signed our petition, a lot of people that belong to our Facebook group that are concerned that we don't lose this little lake. And we're hoping, we've talked to Greenwood Council, we've talked to Midway Council, we're now talking to you because you guys represent those people. And with the amount of people that we've had come forward, I think there's, Chris, how many have we got signed the petition so far?
Up to 1,100 plus.
1,100 people. Not all of them from this area, I'll admit, but a lot of them from here that are concerned about that dam. So we're hoping that council will pass a motion to write a letter to the minister. And basically all we're requesting you to say in that letter is for the provincial government to continue to maintain and protect Marshall Lake as it now exists. We're not asking Grand Forks to have to put in any money. We're just asking the council to represent the people that are concerned about the lake. And I'll pass it off.
I actually want to introduce Diane Gottselig. The Gottseligs own 10 acres on Marshall Lake. They own the land underneath the dam and about a half the lake subsurface. And she's come from Kelowna tonight to talk to you guys about what their experiences have been, first of all, with the lake, why it's important to them, and how they've been sort of dealt with in this, and why it's important for them and us to look at preserving this lake. So,
Hello, I'm Diane Gottselig. My parents own 10 acres up at Marshall Lake, 3 acres of which is underneath the dam. So the road that we use to get to our property is right along the dam. Since last summer, they've created a huge ditch up there without any really consent from us. I actually fell down and injured myself in that ditch a few weeks ago, so it's been kind of interfering with my schoolwork. It's been hard for us to drive through there. We've really enjoyed that property for the past 4 years. My parents really put a lot of work into maintaining the beach up there so that we could all go swimming and just make a dock so that people could fish easier that my dad was kind of thinking to put in. So we're just really concerned about just getting access to the property. We used to be able to drive up there by car, and that was during the summer last summer. Then they cut the access off, and you can barely get a truck through there now. So we have a cabin that's kind of just recreational use, but we do come up every weekend. So we just like to keep it, we let other people use the beach, and we like to just kind of protect the lake and all the animals that have been living up there. So I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Just got a question to ask.
Sure.
I know supporting that, but who put in that ditch?
Pardon me?
You said you fell into a ditch. Somebody
Well,
did?
they put in a ditch to start draining the lake last year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they drained the lake about 2
Okay.
feet since last year, and they planned to increase that ditch by another 6 feet, he said.
The government?
So that would completely cut us off for access altogether.
Okay.
And he said they haven't brought engineers up to figure out how much it's going to cost, but they need to put a whole new road in either down below the dam or completely just make a whole new road on top of the dam after they remove it. So it's going to be a lot of work that will continue to take probably 1 or 2 years to even figure out. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Okay. So, council, questions? Councilor Doherty.
Oh, I'll put a motion, send a letter to the...
Support in principle as they're asking to Steve Thompson, Minister of Forest Lands and Natural Resources. Seconder for that, Councilor Shagan. Discussion. Councilor Smith.
I spoke with Jenny Coleshill, who's a resident biologist here, and she didn't see that there was really an issue with the decommissioning and as far as environmental impact, that the lake is essentially artificial to the degree that its depth is now, and that to decommission the dam is not actually getting rid of the lake, it's just lowering the lake.
Yeah.
And that it's actually returning the lake to what it was naturally prior to its construction. I think it was in '67. Another concern is that the lake contains an invasive species, sunfish, which certainly we wouldn't want to see those in the Kettle River. I'm really not in support of it. I think if that's the way it was before, and it's just been 40 years or 50 years that it's been in place, it's not really doing what it used to do, which was service the mining interests out there.
Would you like to respond to that, Mr.
There's a couple issues
Stevenson?
here. The dam was actually, originally the lake was in when Phoenix was in existence. It was named for James Marshall. It was increased in size in the around the turn of the century. And then it was increased again in 1957 and 61. The idea of returning it to natural storage being sort of acceptable to me as a heritage person is a problem, because that site is heritage now. It's been in use since for 50 years. It's been a place where people have gone and caught their first fish, where people camp, and it's no different than saying that that building over there is not natural, so we should return it to what it was before because it's an artificial structure. We have 3 lakes in the area that we use. We're not the Okanagan. We've got Wilbur's, we've got Jewel, and we've got Marshall. Wilbur's doesn't have a public beach, and from what I understand tonight, it has a lot of beaches. It's the only place that has free camping on the lake. Because Jewel has the provincial park.
We've got a motion on the floor, so basically we were just asking for clarification on that issue.
Okay.
But you could also clarify the sunfish. Is there a risk in terms of the
I've
sunfish?
spoken with Diane Gottselig and also her parents, and they said that for the last year, 2 years,
Well, since last summer, when
There's
they
been-
started draining the lake and they put the ditch in,
there's been no
the
sunfish.
sunfish drained out.
And they see them every year when they
Used
were
to see
there,
them along the shore when the waterway come right
Right.
out to you.
and they're not there.
Okay, so just answering that there may not be all that much of a risk of it. Thank you very much. And going on with the discussion at the table, further comments, councillors? Councillor Smith, do you want to rebuttal?
Well, yeah, just even on the sunfish issue, it's been determined that sunfish are in there and it's an invasive species. I don't think we can take it on a private property owner's word that that issue no longer exists.
No,
That is
and
no
you're
longer
speaking against the
consideration.
motion here for those reasons. Other councillors, comments? Councillor Krog, welcome.
I apologize for being late. We had some severe issues getting back from Montana.
No, but I appreciate you're here this evening. So, do you have any comments on this?
No, not at this.
Sir Kendall?
No, I don't have any comment.
Are we ready for the question? Okay, so the question on the floor is to write or not to write to the Honorable Steve Thompson with a letter in principle requesting that they leave the situation as it is and maintain it as it is. All those in favor? Opposed? Do you wish your vote recorded?
Sure.
Okay, we'll be writing that letter and moving it forward. I'm sure we'll probably use some of the same wording as Greenwood and Midway.
Thank you, Council. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Okay, the next item of business